I don't know what he was doing out there. He had his head down. He was enduring the debate rather than fighting it. Romney, on the other hand, came in with a campaign. He had a plan. He was going to dominate the time. He was going to be aggressive. He's going to push the moderator around, which he did effectively. He was going to relish the evening, enjoying it.
And that's coming from a guy who's in Obama's corner. Chris Matthews there, and that's the calmer moments from him after the debate. Looked like a guy ready to hit the panic button last night. But the question is, after all the strum and drang, will Romney's win in the first debate, and I think we can safely call it that, really change the outcome of the election? We've given a little bit of a historical here. Obviously, it's an open-ended question, but not for the Washington Post's James Downey. His column this morning came with this title: Obama lost the first debate, but will win the election. If you go into the piece, he says, at most, Wednesday nights was a case of too little, too late for Romney, and that never has a challenger's strong first debate performance closed as large a national polling gap as Romney faced going into last night's debate. Historically, there's a lot of precedent. You just got to go to George W. Bush in 2004. Had an awful first debate against Kerry. Turned it around in the subsequent ones. We all know he won re-election. And the gaps that we're seeing in the swing states seems to say this is still an uphill climb. But I do think a couple things changed for Romney last night, which was, I had been hearing, and I'm sure you guys had too, a lot of the big donor money was thinking, hey, maybe I can spend my money more wisely here. We'll go spend on these some House or Senate races. I saw Rove and a lot of the PAC guys saying after last night, we're all in. He's bought himself at least, you know, the next 2 weeks here of unrequited love. For all the guys telling him you're spending too much time prepping for the campaign, I don't hear that today. He has gotten relevancy again, and I think he's flipped the narrative. How important was last night for Mitt Romney, you think, John?
Huge, huge, absolutely huge. All of a sudden he's a player again. He changed the trajectory. He's not going to win the campaign and the election on last night's, but all of a sudden he's back in the game. And so it's an election. You know, it's important to me in my election. I'm running an issues-based campaign in the 17th Congressional District, and with the opponent has fundamentally different views than I do. And the fact, I think the American people were the big winner last night, because ultimately we had a substantive debate. And we'll check, fact check.
From the political, from your end, you got a tough enough challenge to run against an incumbent in a district that's blue in terms of registration. You don't need things any tougher for you. So if the top of the ticket's going to get blown out, it makes your job even more difficult. And you've been hearing some of the scuttlebutt, too, from guys at the RCCC saying, hey, come on now.
Sure.
You know, this guy's hurting me. On the flip side, I got to think Joe Biden all of a sudden is relevant next week. And let's pray to God he's not playing hero ball by thinking, don't worry, President, I got it. You can see the guys, no, Joe, right? But that said, they've got to now figure out how to spend the time between now and the next debate. If you were counseling the president, and obviously you got a vested interest in this thing, what would you say you'd want to see him do different for the next debate than he did now?
To not sit there and just take the information that is being given. You need to fight back. You need to bring out the facts to support what you're standing for, and also bring up the facts that shows the inaccuracies of what your opponent is saying.
Would you have liked to have heard him say 47% last night?
I think it would have been a good idea to bring something along those lines up, and also to attack Governor Romney a little bit more.
Andrew, I've heard this question debated, but what do you think was more damning? The GOP convention for Romney or last night for the president?
You know, I'll say the last night for the president, because the expectations, I think, were higher for the president going into the debate than they were for Romney going into the Republican convention. I also think that Obama had more to lose last night than Romney did going into the Republican convention. But I just want to remind everybody, and also to start a fight with Jessica, that when we go back to the Republican primary debates, as soon as somebody had a good debate night, their numbers spiked, and everybody was saying they're the next coming, and that's how we got Herman Cain as the front runner in the race for a couple of weeks, and Newt Gingrich and Michelle Bachmann. And from a reality TV standpoint, yeah, I think this is going to have people talking about Mitt Romney a little bit differently, but these things have tended to be short-lived, and I don't think there's a lot of there beyond perhaps the willingness to give Mr. Romney a second look.
As we talked about, there's precedence. This is not uncommon that the challenger does better in the first debate, right?
Well, yeah, you mentioned with George W. Bush. Bill Clinton also in '96 did not have a great first debate. And you can go back, Ronald Reagan in 1984 didn't have a particularly good first debate. But it's, you know, I don't think there's going to be a lot of people who looked at the two men on stage last night and thought, boy, you know, I didn't really know this Obama guy, but now all of a sudden things are different. Like, people have 4 years, 5 years of knowledge about Barack Obama. This may have increased their thoughts about Mitt Romney and may have increased his standing, but I don't think it.
Jeff, do you think, from a consultant, and I know with your rooting interest in this one, but do you think if Obama hit it out of the park last night and Romney was, he crushed him, could he have put it away last night?
No question, it would be very difficult just because he has had a few rough weeks, and you know, the narrative in the press has been that he's been behind, and with early voting starting already, it's very difficult to change a narrative. So I think last night was critical for him, but he delivered. And to your point, Reagan actually, I actually see a lot of similarities to this. He had this, Carter created this caricature of Reagan as well, and he came through and was substantive and showed the American people that he's ready for the job, which is exactly what Romney did last night.
Now, we talked about the optics of it, the style certainly of it, and the delivery, but the facts. A lot of people thought if anyone got a beating last night, it was the facts. When we come back, we're going to do a little fact checking about what we heard from the two men last night, and we're going to try and separate a little fact from fiction. Stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back.